Roster rumors have started to diminish the true discussions on how roster changes actually work, because the average fan has had a chance to think about them a little bit. They've had a chance to understand the fact that these moves are in fact going to be happening. And with this particular move of Dallas adding Shotzzy, we didn't see as much of an uproar on this one and kind of the actual risk around this change. And there are a few reasons for that, right? The first one being is that it took time. It took time for this announcement to be rumored. There were a lot of fans who, like I said, out there who have been kind of having a few opportunities, some time to think about how this move is really going to work. The second being that Shotzzy isn't just some random rookie search and destroy star that's coming from, the most random organization that you can think of. He comes from Halo, right? He's a 5-time champion. He's won a Halo World Championship under Splice in 2018. His body of work is definitely impressive. However, you do need to address the fact that he has only played at one Call of Duty LAN. Just one. And that was the CWL Amateur Finals this season, where he and Pharaoh together finished top 48. So he has success in other FPSs, but coming over to Call of Duty, will it work? And is it really a good decision for Dallas to make at this point? Is it worth the investment to go with somebody who has played at one Call of Duty LAN and finished top 48 alongside Pharaoh in the amateur finals? Is it worth it? And I feel like we don't have to question that as much. And you could say, well, why is that? Why do we not have to question this body of work? Why do we have to question whether or not this transition of coming from Halo and entering into Call of Duty, as he did last season, but kind of under the wraps more, but officially this year, we don't have to question whether or not that's going to work as much. Why? Because we've already seen players do this before, right? Recently, Frosty. We've seen a Hook who obviously, came from Call of Duty prior, but then kind of ventured over to Halo. But more specifically, Frosty is the perfect example. A fellow world champion, a guy who was very well known, of course, in the Halo scene, and the track record pretty much sits somewhat strong. It kind of speaks for itself, if you will. So one thing that everyone does need to be aware of, though, and the things that we have kind of learned, the growing pains from coming into a title like Call of Duty from Halo, there are some growing pains, and those things take some time, right? If we look at this as being a risk, it may not instantly show its immediate worth. I mean, you look at this guy, like I said, Shotzzy on paper, you say, hey, he's been a previous world champion. We throw him into a roster. It by no means instantly is going to work, and the way that we can kind of look at that is by the most accurate and recent example of Frosty, like we talked about. It wasn't an instant success. It took some time, right, for him to really start to kind of reach his best type of play. There were many players throughout this season who talked about him and said how his communication and his mindset, his ability to rotate, some things just weren't all there and still needed to be worked on. However, toward the end of Black Ops 4, we started to see him begin to play his best COD. And even with Hook, the same way kind of worked. By no means was Hook up to his standard that we remembered from 2015 at the start of his return in World War II. He wasn't the same. Everyone was thinking, wait, did we just kind of wait for this long for this guy and he's not going to play at the same level? And obviously, like we said, it took maybe a few months for him to start to get back in form. And obviously in Black Ops 4, he was back to his old self. But with players making the transition to play at the highest level, you have to give them some time. It won't be an instant, overnight type of success story. Very rarely have we seen something like that happen. One of those outliers happens to be Formal. So if he were to be in good company and instantly transition, like I said, he's in a very small but elite group of guys who managed to do that. But it is, in my opinion, worth that transition time, right? Having off-season scrimmages, having veterans around him, I think will only speed up that process. And I think because of that, it only is now more worth it to try and push in that type of investment. Clearly, like I said, the track record shows this isn't something new or groundbreaking that Dallas is doing. There's a sample size, not even just Halo, but even young players as well. And like I said, it's not something that, like Dallas is doing that's groundbreaking by not necessarily just investing in a Halo pro, but investing in young talent that you could argue in some ways is somewhat unproven to the point where they've maybe played in a minor, amount of lands. They maybe don't have years of experience. And it's not something unique to Dallas, and it's not something unique to other top organizations that have existed in Call of Duty for years, right? Investing in young talent just within the last few seasons. Optic with Dashi, FaZe was selling him in ASIM. E United with Abizi and Simp. That one definitely worked out. Reciprocity with Dylan. The list goes on, and by no means does it end there. This also isn't the first time that Envy has done this as well, right? We look at their time in World War II in the middle of the season. There was a lot of question. I think I even talked about Decimate being added to Envy. Was it worth it? Is it the right decision for them to make? And obviously, in the end of things, you could argue how that kind of panned out. Regardless, though, they have thought about this one as well. And a lot of organizations who we kind of know have done it, like you think of a United, you think of Optic, but we don't really realize have all these organizations have started to do this exact same thing, invest in young talent. And kind of on that same notion, esports is starting to go in the trend of regular sports, right? We talk about franchising. You take on risks with young talent. The idea that young talent has the ability to see a lot of success sometimes is a worthy and very interesting venture. There's a reason why in regular sports you trade draft picks and why the risk of those holds value. And sometimes, like I said, it's a risk, but sometimes a percentage of the time will land you a top-level player. That risk is sometimes worth it for a lot of people and often does hold weight. So with franchising coming into Call of Duty, now, if ever, is the time to invest in young talent, invest in young players, because you may not get an opportunity to get them again, right? We've seen top-level amateur players start to kind of rise on a few organizations. Those players can then later start to carry forward. Maybe they don't have, a solid contract. Maybe their buyout's slow. You have the ability to grab them somewhat easily. However, when it comes to franchising, it's not going to work that way, right? If E United didn't previously have Simp, I can guarantee you they wouldn't have got him, or they would have had to spend a pretty penny to get him on their lineup because of the way that franchising works. Every player is now immediately, their net worth has doubled, tripled, quadrupled, especially if you're a young player. Not everybody. The market hasn't massively upgraded, but everyone is now kind of toward more of a stable basis. And so, like I said, if you are interested in wanting to get young players, now is the time to do so. Because like I've talked about, and I will say this until everyone starts to say it themselves, franchising is a decade-plus investment, meaning that you may not get young players again. If you don't get your chance now at Shotzzy, you may never will. And do you want to take the risk of having another organization have them or have him on their team? Probably not. So let's take a few quotes, because I really liked the video that Dallas COD actually released on Shotzzy, because addressing this for me is important to kind of learn where his mindset is. So these are a few quotes that he said. "You may not know who I am. Even though I've never competed in Call of Duty, they decided to take a chance on me. I know it's a big risk for a team to take a chance on an unproven player like me. I know I have a lot to prove this year." And I think that's great insight. I really do. I think kind of learning where his frame of mind is as of this moment is, hey, I know the risk. I know what's involved, and I'm willing to prove myself knowing that, hey, maybe I deserve it, maybe I don't. From a lot of people's opinions, maybe I don't, maybe I do. But regardless, I'm here, and I want to try to prove myself. And I think it's important to kind of earn that perspective and kind of see where Shotzzy's mindset is as of now. So, my personal opinion, Shotzzy, I think it is, in fact, worth it. It is worth the risk to go for someone like him. He not only has a solid track record by being a Halo World Champion, but he also has players around him that he's going to be familiar with. He's going to have veterans around him as well, which I think will provide an interesting but functioning dynamic at the same time. Everyone knows Clayster's track record in working with young players like Abizi and Simp. Clearly that worked out toward the end of Black Ops 4, and most likely will be applied here as well. So I believe that it will take some time. I don't think we're going to see Shotzzy instantly be an overnight type of success, but the hype around this guy isn't misplaced, right? I've had the ability to watch his stream. I've had the ability to cast over him a few different times. He has the skill. There's no questioning about that, right? We've seen the movement in the Reddit highlights. We've seen his overall skill in certain online tournaments, and while the sample size is in fact small when it comes down to COD, I think the amount of work that has been done for him does in fact speak for itself.